It's live.
Right? All rise, please.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which stands one nation under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all.
Before I have Penny call the roll, I want to thank everybody for attending tonight. Very important meeting, and we appreciate everybody being here. Penny, would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Burns.
Here.
Miss Angeline.
Here.
Ms. Meyer.
Here.
Ms. Meister.
Here.
Mr. Babel.
Here.
Ms. Bolton.
Here.
6 present, and we have a quorum. Right now, as we go through this agenda, hopefully everybody has a copy of the agenda out there. If not, you can share. So the first thing we need to do is take a look at the minutes from the May 20th, 2025 council meeting. Are there any questions from council members on those minutes? If there are no questions, do I have a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Motion made by Mr. Babel. Do I have a second? Second by Ms. Angeline. Any further discussion? Penny, call the roll, please.
Mr. Burns.
Abstain.
Miss Angeline.
Yes.
Ms. Meyer.
Yes.
Ms. Meister.
Yes.
Mr. Babel.
Yeah.
Ms. Bolton.
Yay.
Motion passes 5-0. In your packet, you have the bills that were paid. This Sozer has sort of separated them out. So there's water bills that are shown there, which is not paid out of the general fund, but from the water fund. So if you want to review those real quick, if you have questions, I'd ask you to direct those to the Sozer. And residents may also ask questions after council.
Am I missing it in my stack of documents?
It should be under.
Mine was stapled to the
Agenda.
pay ordinance.
Oh, yeah, no. Do you want mine? I'm looking on my note book. I can't find it in my note.
It's at the
It's
bottom.
at the bottom? You're fucking, thanks. I'm just trying to be nice. Are all of these things showing for tonight's
Yes.
meeting? Okay. Okay.
Are we allowed to ask what any of these are?
What?
Are we allowed to ask what any of these are?
Yeah.
But almost $20,000 is Staples. The very first one.
Oh, no, that, I'm glad you asked that. That was a typo on me and we're getting a refund.
Okay.
I'm glad you asked, because I have been on the phone actually last month. And the check has already been processed, it's coming back. That is me, that was a typo.
Okay.
And thank God I caught it, because I was like, whoops, so they are, yeah. We had a huge credit from Staples, right? It would take 4 or 5 years, to take 10 years.
What was the amount?
So I'm glad you brought that up, yes.
What was the amount? What was close to?
220. The first thing
The
was
Where-
estimate of what it
Oh, yeah,
was.
so the check was really $198.79.
Oh,
It was
okay.
supposed to be.
Oh, so the typo was on the.
Me.
Okay, gotcha.
Yes, I'm glad you brought that up, yeah.
Okay.
That's a lot of staples.
That's a lot of paper.
I can't believe when I looked through that, I didn't mark it, yeah. Yeah.
Hamilton County Sheriff's Department, $17,877.88.
Yeah, that's the monthly payment.
The monthly, we pay them monthly.
Monthly, yes.
Okay, that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, a lot of this you'll see monthly. we have a lot of like Verizon, Spectrum, AT&T, a lot of the fiber. The Verizon is Waterworks and, Time Warner is, Spectrum is, also Waterworks. Also fiber is a mixture of the whole village and Waterworks. We have a report that all the broke down of the accounts.
Why do we have so many different companies?
They all do a different thing, like Alpha Fiber is cell phone and, Verizon's a cell phone, one cell phone, and then Spectrum, I'm assuming, I'm not sure what Spectrum, we pay, it's
Spectrum,
just one account.
yeah, I'd have to look into our contracts, but, Alta Fiber is not offered in our water plant, so we use a separate vendor for internet for the water plant. Some of these is, for security cameras that's offered through a vendor. The other's phone and internet between waterworks, municipal building, and our maintenance building.
Any other questions? I have just one comment, so take a look. I have $86.35. That's the renewal for our property maintenance for this year. I paid for that and village roof.
We were really worried about that.
Well, I want to be on the record.
Okay, I hear you. I'm real concerned about that. I'm glad you cleared that up.
Well, next month, they're gonna get the one for, out of our grant. That's much larger.
Okay.
But that's the same thing. Any other questions? Questions from the audience? There's no further questions. Do I have a motion to approve the pay ordinance 6-2025?
So moved.
Motion made by Mr. Boltman and second by Ms. Meister. Any further discussion? Can you call the roll, please?
Mr. Burns,
Yes.
Ms. Angeline,
Yes.
Ms. Meyer,
Yes.
Ms. Meister,
Yes.
Mr. Babel,
Okay.
Ms. Bolton.
Yay.
So we're gonna move on now to public comments. And so if somebody in the audience wants to speak tonight, I ask that you register with Penny Williams, our clerk. You need your name and your address, the topic that you're going to be talking about. I'll read this real quick here. The Village of Cleves values community input and encourages participation. While we welcome passionate viewpoints, we ask that all comments remain respectful, free of disruptive behavior. Our goal is to maintain a constructive and professional environment. Is there anybody that wants to speak or ask any questions tonight? Yes, sir. You want to go over to Penny and you'll come up. I think the podium's over here, unfortunately.
This right here.
Not that, in it past my chair, that's gonna be a problem.
Someone at an insurance meeting over here disrupted everything. We don't resonate with that.
Uh-oh, I see Mary's face.
Oh, you're fine.
What, it wasn't you? Oh. Just.
Thanks.
This is the podium right here.
My name is Don Muller. I'm not actually a Cleves resident. I live in North Bend on 3283 Road. And our neighbor came to us last week and told us that there was a plan to possibly annex our street. And I spoke to Mr. Havig. I just wanted to make my voice heard because we have not heard anything about it on our street until I reached out. And Mayor Chuck came and stayed low. That's not him. So I just wanted to get on the record that as a resident on my street, I don't want to speak for other people on my street because they're not here. But we don't know anything about it, and I don't want to show support or against. But I want to make it known that we don't know anything about it. So, if there are other discussions made between Miami Township and Cleves, I want on the record that we did not support it or object to it, but just want the information. So, that's the whole reason.
Justin, why don't you respond?
Yeah, absolutely, and I appreciate you reaching out as well. As we discussed on the phone, it's not a matter of withholding or not being transparent. It's just the conversation that took place with Miami Township was the first step, and even the potential for possible annexation down the road. And that stems from a development that's going to go in Brunswick Way, which is the development of 7 new homes. We've worked with that developer in the past. They've shown interest in being part of the village of Cleves within our municipal limits. As such, the first step was to reach out to Miami Township and try to be good partners with one another. We didn't want to catch them off guard. As this moves forward, and if the potential becomes real for annexation, we'll have a town hall meeting. We'll knock on your door. We'll schedule formal and informal sessions. We'll answer every question you have.
I'm curious if that is normally annexation is brought up by a resident or a business owner or a municipality, because if this is for the benefit of the developer, for us to be like Cleves, that's not done. That is not requested for no reason. It's like there has to be something behind it, and I don't think that's being a very good partner with us, with that developer to not talk to the neighbors that he just purchased the land beside, ask if that was something that we would be interested in, or even starting the process of get the ball rolling on the talks. So that's my wife and I both were a little bit out off guard by that, because we've lived on the street the longest, and hear Chuck about this. We've never had anyone come to speak to us from any Miami Township or anything else. So the first meeting I actually had with the government official was Mayor Chuck, who came by this week. So I just want to make sure that we're kept in the loop in any discussions that are needed for our street.
Yeah, sure, absolutely. And the intent was not to raise an alarm in anyone's mind. I don't want to speak for the developer. There's a host of reasons why they may be interested in annexing into Cleves rather than township. Our form of government offers home rule authority, as you and I discussed. With that comes zoning regulations, local ordinances, some things we're going to talk about tonight, whether that's a mayor's court or a civil court or zoning appeals, all of these things. Additionally, there is the ability for a TIF, which the township could do as well. But also there's real estate abatements that could occur. And I'm not saying that that's why the developer wants to do it. I'm not saying that's been discussed. There's a whole host of reasons why they may want to. Additionally, I think it could make the homes more marketable, as our inside millage is lower than the townships. There's a lot of reasons. But to answer the other part of your question, does it come from a developer, a homeowner, the government? It could come from any of those three. It could come from a landowner or the government. So there's different types of annexation. The reason the first step was to reach out to Miami Township, because if they're not opposed to it and we have support of all landowners, we can do what's called a type 2 expedited annexation. That's the quickest and easiest form. The law is long and convoluted. There's many ways we can go about it, but the easiest way is expedited. And if we did take that initiative on, we would start with the path of least resistance and move down.
Does the water utility have anything to do with it?
Well, the fact that we offer the infrastructure there for water does strengthen our ability to annex. Yes.
Is this the same developer that we heard from last month?
Yes, this is the Iconic Homes, and part of their residential development initiatives are Brunswick Way right now. They're in the design phase of it, so they've acquired the property and they're looking to develop sooner.
I'd also like to say that he just purchased the property in May. When I saw on the auditor's site, and the first thing he was trying to do is to against Cleves residents. I love Cleves, by the way, it's nothing against Stephen. It's more of the making sure that it does not seem, I'm gonna misspeak, it does not seem very up and up when that's the first course of action after it's purchased is, oh, now we're gonna be annexed into Cleves. So it's just,
Sure,
just I'm just concerned, I wanna know what's going on over there.
absolutely, and so that would be a question for the developer. But I don't want you to think that there's this initiative that that's absolutely his intent. And we've had many discussions with this developer, and one of those was, kind of in the visionary stage, was there an appetite for the village to annex that? And that's what sparked this in the conversation. So I don't want you to think that the developer is 100% sold, and that's his vision, and that's what they're going to execute. I don't know. I simply, truthfully, I don't. I was just doing our due diligence to make sure that there was an appetite and agreement if that's something we want to move forward on down the road.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you for speaking. And I'll close it with, if there is any further development or progresses, I will reach out to you every step of the way and keep you updated. All right, thank you.
You'll love us, we're great.
Okay, Justin, is there any old business that we have to address tonight?
I don't believe so. All on new business.
Then we'll move on to new business. And the first one is going to be ordinance
Ordinance 18-2025.
18-2025. That is in your packets. And Justin, why don't you give them a little bit of an idea of what the Clean Court is designed to do and why it's being declared as an emergency. I'm sorry.
For those of us on electronic, could you read the title of it? There's no numbers on it.
Ordinance establishing the clean court.
I do.
I'm
Sorry to
sorry.
interrupt.
I'll do that. So you want to give them a little bit of overview?
Sure. This is an ordinance establishing the clean court as a civil court venue for local ordinance enforcement and declaring it an emergency. So the clean court would just be an extension of our court systems here in Cleves. As it states in title, it's a civil court. It's meant to hear civil ordinance violations. We gave it the name clean for code, livability, enforcement, and nuisance court. That really just, it outlines the heart of the purpose. So when we talk, courts and just traditional venues, we've got the BZA. The BZA's role is to hear zoning violations and issue variances. We continue to work to reinstate our mayor's court. Mayor's court will be for criminal violations, criminal ordinance violations. And this clean court would cover the civil ordinances that aren't covered by mayor's court or the BZA. So, the list is long, but the main ones are grass control, nuisance property, junk motor vehicles, things of that nature that aren't codified criminally. So if this is approved tonight, how that looks is we'll appoint members of the community to the clean court. They'll serve as like quasi jury, and we'll have a magistrate preside as a neutral over that, just to make sure that we stay procedurally intact. And they'll preside just to make sure that the clean court quasi jury follows procedural regulations. So, give you an example. Our zoning and code enforcement officer issues a citation for tall grass to a property. They'll get a ticket, a fine. They can elect to pay that out, or they'll be given a court date to clean court where they can come have their case heard. That case will ultimately be decided whether they're liable or not by the quasi jury that's appointed. The magistrate neutral will sit there, just answer any procedural questions on how to handle abatement or any legal questions they may have.
We've already got that jury assigned, right?
Well, we're going to be asking you in a second to go ahead and approve that the BZA state volunteers will serve in that capacity. This is a different.
Okay. What does the CLEAN mean? What does it stand for?
So it stands for Code, Livability, Enforcement, and Nuisance Court.
Okay. And how many people are you assigning to this jury or whatever?
Same numbers we have. in the-
Five.
Five. They're citizens who are volunteers. They don't get paid once a month.
Are you gonna have trouble with the word quasi jury? Is this not a board? Is it?
So I would further Rob on that, because we put this together, collaboratively.
And originally, the word jury was in there, and I changed to quasi jury because it's made up of your peers, but it's not 12 people, it's not 9 people, it doesn't follow the jury rules, but it's a quasi version.
They operate like a jury.
I mean, they're gonna make the decision, people that are appointed. So you're not being, the finder of fact is that quasi jury, that's what they're gonna be, coined with doing. So the same as a jury, is that term aside from something.
The reality of it is we're not required to have a quasi jury. We sought to have, almost a citizen review board of peers here and determine these cases rather than just an appointed magistrate.
The magistrate could do it, but by having peers in the community, it's just a better look and a better way to do business, I would think.
That's the intent behind having quasi jury.
I see the intent. Is this modeled off of something else that exists already, or?
More model of BZA, to how that's being decided, because people that live in the community are making a determination about their peers.
I think the closest reference would be like a citizens review board that other municipalities have for most of different regions.
And we're not using that word for what? Why aren't we using the community review board versus a quasi jury?
I guess we could. I think that by calling it the clean board, it outlines the intent of what it is: code enforcement, livability, and nuisance violations.
I don't have a problem. I'm just trying to.
And it's essentially not a review. They're actually
They're making decisions.
determining if someone is in fact responsible for doing that or not. So a review board is more geared toward actions of the municipality personnel or the personnel that they're overseeing that. Reviewing the content and their action.
I've actually a curious question. Is this gonna be on the same night as the other? That's all, it's just one meeting.
So I hate to burn our time on a semantic issue, but here, imagine this scenario. Somebody's upset because they're being dragged into a civil court. They say, what's this jury? They're all picked by administration. That's not a jury. That's unfair. That they're not going to appreciate the intent that this was putting this in the citizens' hands rather than our administration.
Because they weren't picked out of the hat, so to speak, is that what you're saying?
How are we picking that's my question.
They're volunteers, basically.
So we'll send something out to the whole community and.
Yeah, anybody could do it, and they serve a specific number of years based on the BZA, which is in the Ohio Revised Code. We're just modeling it after that. So anybody could apply for that position as those terms expire.
So it's gonna be the same people. It's not just gonna vary to where people register and then they get called like we do downtown for
Now,
during.
it's the same people
Okay,
who are here during a given year. Now, it could change.
If
Like,
someone
we
resigns.
have one that will go off this year,
okay.
and their standard terms is what they are. And so that person may say, hey, I don't want to do this anymore, then we're going to have to put it out to the community who would like to be part of that. Now, I will say this to you. I asked this question back in 2021, about where is the BCA? Because it was in our ordinances and it was in our Ohio Revised Code. And I was told nobody allowed to. Okay, that's what I was told. And we had no difficulty getting people involved. So I'm not even sure they were ever asked. If we can't get people, could get five, then you're gonna wind up with 4 or 3 companies that will do that. But I think the purpose of it is to not, I mean, either you did or you didn't do something. Either you cut your grass or you haven't cut your grass. Either you kept your property clean or you haven't. I think the intent would be you're gonna be getting a fine. There may be some people that are gonna come in and they're gonna, maybe that they didn't do as well as they should, but they give a commitment in that hearing to the magistrate and to the jury that they really maybe can't afford this. On their taxes, they don't pay it. The jury, I believe, would have an opportunity to say yay or nay to that. I would assume, Justin. I mean, we haven't done it yet, so.
Sure, yeah, I mean, they can take anything under consideration, so just like in marriage court, you can plead no contest. So you could agree to the facts, but, there may be other mitigating circumstances. And to that, they could waive the fine and just assess court costs, or they could suspend the fines. As we talk about marriage court, in any decision, made by civil court or criminal court, and it's outlined in this ordinance, ORC section 2506 outlines that any judgment made by a village or municipal corporation can be appealed to the Court of Common Pleas in Hamilton County, as long as they follow the rules outlined. So with these civil violations, by statutory requirements, we don't have to have any sort of venue to hear it. We can issue a citation, and if they don't pay it, we just place it on their property bill. The goal here is to offer the highest level of due process we can. We could just have a magistrate or a neutral hear the case and determine if they're guilty or not. We're looking to offer to expand on due process and not only allow them a venue to hear their case, but also have their peers determine the guilt and fine.
Now, if we have more people, let's say in fantasy world, we have more people signing up or who want to do it than we have spots for it, then how do we decide who gets to be on that?
Well, they're appointed for a term. So whenever there is somebody going off, that's where council would have to get involved. If there were 2 or 3 candidates very similar, I would see it, to when we have a vacancy on council, we would probably interview those people and then make a decision.
I want to go, Kevin. I understand what you're saying by that, or yeah, they're people picked by the administration. Well, if in civil court, because that's a different ballgame, and you have a little bit more recourse with criminal court. But if you have a magistrate that's making the decision by himself and he's paid by the administration, that's the flip side. So it's like Justin said, it was just trying to offer more of a, people on the board or on the clean court can, as BZA could do, they can they can waive a fine. They can, make a deal, come back in a month and try to take care of this or that or the other. Can't afford it, we understand, do what you can. So if you're getting that from other people who live in the community that you may have appealed to with your mitigation. So.
Can I say one of the things I like about it is the consistency. If you had 5 different people all the time, you could get a bunch of inconsistent rulings based on who was sitting in the chair at the time. I like the idea that it would be more consistent across the board. It's a better chance anyway. So.
Kevin, you have your hand up.
So I'll say 2 things. First, I have the concern. I'm not poo-pooing. I'm not going to vote no, but I have the concern that it's too cute by half. Like we're really trying to broadcast that we're trying to do this with as much input as possible, make sure we get the right. Our intent is good, but it may be too many duties for these 5 appointees, and it may not be appreciated. Those are hazards in my view. I'm not gonna blow this up for those. Second, I would just like, clarification of the pipeline. So in all of our village law enforcement going on, we've got HTSO taking care of Ohio Revised Code, criminal offenses, not civil offenses.
So no, the Hathaway Sheriff's Office will not enforce any ordinances, but whether they're civil or criminal. There are patrol arm, and they handle our patrol duties.
But they're doing Ohio code.
They will only enforce the Ohio Revised Code.
So then we have things we want to accomplish as the village. So we have civil and criminal ordinances that we want to enforce. Criminal ordinances will go to mayor's court.
Correct. Yes.
And will be adjudicated there. Civil offenses can take one of two natures. Either it's a zoning dispute, which isn't strictly an offense. That's going to go to the Board of Zoning Appeal, BZA. And only those cases that are, hey, should we do this or not do this? Whereas offenses, which are nuisance in nature, are going to go to this court.
Correct. Yes.
Did I miss anything?
No. Got it. I do want to make one comment that I think we should understand and consider. There has been a movement in Ohio to do away with any type of mayor courts throughout Ohio. There are some very successful ones that are respected, and those are ones that are looking for compliance rather than making money. Mayor's courts and courts like we're talking about today have gotten sort of a bad reputation because of the fact that they were used as a revenue source. We're not looking at this as a revenue source. We're looking at both the BZA and the clean court, and to some extent, even in the area of the mayor's court. We're looking for compliance. I mean, I think that's really all government should be looking for is compliance, so that the residents live in the safest, cleanest environment they can.
Quality of life issues.
I'm sorry?
Quality of life issues.
Quality of life, correct. Are there any other questions or concerns from council? I'll ask the audience any comments or questions you would like to say. If there's no further questions,
Let me ask one. Sorry.
yeah, because, go ahead, Jeff.
Did we hit this in finance? Are there additional costs associated with this?
It's all in the budget that we proposed when we started setting up both the local police agency and the court system. There's really no additional cost by that.
Thank you.
Well, now because this is an emergency, what we will need to do is vote to suspend the rules first. And then we would have to then follow that with a recommendation to adopt the ordinance. So in this case, I'm asking for a motion to suspend the rule for ordinance or rules for ordinance 18-2025 and read by title only, establishing the clean court and declaring it an emergency. Do I have a motion to suspend the rules?
So moved.
Motion made by Mr. Babel. Do I have a second? Second by Ms. Angelini. Any further discussion? Penny, please call the roll.
Mr. Burns,
Yes.
Ms. Angeline,
Yes.
Ms. Meyer,
Yes.
Ms. Meister,
Yes.
Mr. Babel,
Yay.
Ms. Golden.
Yay.
Motion passes 6-0. Now we'll have a motion to adopt ordinance 18-2025, establishing the clean court and declaring it an emergency with the understanding, because it is an emergency, it will go into effect immediately. Do I have a motion?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Sorry?
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Babel. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Ms. Angeline.
Meyer.
Oh, it's Ms. Meyer?
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
well, one raised their hand and one said, let's three off.
Ms. Meyer? Had any further discussion? No discussion, Penny, please call the roll.
Mr. Burns,
Yes.
Ms. Angeline,
Yes.
Ms. Meyer,
Yes.
Ms. Meister,
Yes.
Mr. Babel,
Yay.
Ms. Bolt.
Yay.
On ordinance, this next ordinance is ordinance 19-2025, authorizing the village administrator to enter a purchase agreement with U.S. Bank for police radio procurement. Before I turn this over to Mr. Hagy, if you are on our village email list, those here and those at home, I did have questions about this. There were questions from residents because they actually had a copy in advance of the ordinance and our agenda. And the question boiled down, why do we need to purchase the agreement? That was made by a resident who was unaware that we're bringing a very small footprint back into the village of the police department. And we all know it is small. You have a town marshal part-time, hired basically a detective last month, and there's gonna have to be a means of communicating, for ours, not necessarily with the sheriff's department, but internally with our police, because it's probably going to be another part-time detective that will be hired in the future. So, Mr. Hagy, if I missed anything, if you want to go in and describe more about the purchase agreement, please do so at this time.
Yeah, I would just outline that communication is essential for any law enforcement officer, especially when they're engaged in criminal justice enforcement. And while, their duties are going to encompass local criminal ordinance enforcement, often that branches off into other criminal justice avenues, whether that's a nuisance property that's related to drug trafficking or warrants. So just like any law enforcement officer would have a need to a radio to communicate with dispatch and other law enforcement officers, that's why our detectives and officers will need it. Also, we're dedicated to being collaborative here with the sheriff's offices. They're our patrol arm, and making them aware when our officers are out somewhere, calling for assistance, making sure they're there and know where we're at, and vice versa, is a critical element of it. So it's 3 radios, and the cost there is $17,416.92. It'll be a 4-year lease purchase, tax exempt, with 8 semi-annual payments of $2,417.55. And so that was appropriated when we approved the local authority for finance committee and council.
That was a little cheaper than what you thought it was gonna be in finance, correct?
I knocked one radio down, and also instead of doing the 6 semi-annual payments of $31.41, it was actually, for whatever reason, it's better terms to do 8. So 6 semi-annual payments would have an interest rate of 6.04%. 8 had an interest rate of 5.85%.
I just wanna make sure, cause in finance, we were talking about $24,000.
So we knocked one off.
Okay, that's great.
So who are they communicating with on these radios? Like who would dispatch be since there's only you and the officer?
So all agencies are linked to Hamilton County Communications Center.
Okay.
And so, and it really depends on your role, but patrol officers log into their computer, their radio, and all of that communication routes from the Hamilton County Communications Center to them. Well, our officers won't have mobile computers. They'll have radios so they can log on. So dispatch knows that they're an available unit or what their duty or function is that day. Also, if they go out to an address,
So who's dispatch in this
the
scenario?
Hamilton County Communications Center would. They're a contract for everybody except for, I think Indian Hill at this point, right?
I believe, yes, I believe
They dispatch for everyone in this area, whether that's police, fire, or otherwise. And also, it's a means of communication back and forth the sheriff's office, any other law enforcement agency that may be engaged, whether that's like fugitive apprehension or anyone else, and also the fire department.
So if an officer goes to a house to look at someone's grass, they'll be dispatched, or everybody will know that that's where they are?
No, that's called self-initiated activity, and they would put that out on the radio or call it in. That way, the communications officer knows where they're at. There's a need for help, and it also lets our sheriff's office partners know where we're at.
Right.
But tall grass, that's a civil violation, and so an officer would probably go out with our code enforcement officer.
Which is it.
And so we would, our officer, well, the code enforcement officer is the appropriate person to handle that incident. But let's say we go to a nuisance property where there could be underlying theft, burglary, firearms violations, felony subjects. They'd be on the radio, they would let the sheriff's office know, and then it's a collaborative effort where our zoning and code enforcement officer would probably be there to handle the civil issues. Our officer or the sheriff's office would be there to handle criminal justice issues.
Now, would be just, if there was some catastrophe happens like in a village or place, can our officers be called in on a mutual aid?
So it wouldn't have to be mutual aid because we have local authority. But in the event of an emergency or crisis, whether that's an emergency at the school or another natural disaster, or any catastrophe you could think of, yeah, it's all hands on deck. So like an officer needs assistance call or emergency broadcast, yes, where they'd have a duty to respond.
So what's the shelf life of these radios?
So before I selected the APX 6000, which is the industry standard across America, but especially locally, I talked to Com Center, Towns County Communication Center. They have no plans to move on from this radio in the near future. So it's going to remain the industry standard for a long period of time. Motorola is not looking to phase it out. The shelf life is 10 years or more.
Does that include batteries? I feel like
Batteries will need replaced, but batteries are between $100 and $200 a piece.
Are we using US Bank instead of PNC?
US Bank is who handles, that's the partner with Mobilecom, who's our vendor for all communication devices like this. So US Bank is the recommended partner through them, and the specific program managers who handles their communications, emergency communications. So I think it's more of an industry standard rather than reaching out to PNC Bank. In other conversations we had with PNC Bank, anything under $20,000 they don't offer, and their rates aren't as competitive from what we've looked at recently with a lawnmower purchase.
It is a purchase though, it's not a lease.
They call it a lease purchase, just like they would like a law enforcement vehicle. It is a purchase. We would own it.
When it's done, we're owning the rate.
Yes.
Because lease isn't in the title in here.
They call it I think it's in the body of the ordinance, but
Okay.
they call it it's actually a TELP is what they call it for any capital purchases. For government equipment, it's a tax exempt lease purchase agreement. That'd be the same thing that we'd use if we buy like a police car or fire engine.
Any other questions from council? Questions from the audience? Now, this one's not declared an emergency, but we still have to suspend the rules. And Rob, how long is the 40 days when it's not an emergency before it goes into effect? Correct. Okay, so I'm going to ask for a motion to suspend the rules for ordinance 19-2025.
I want to pause you here. It's not listed on the agenda, and that may be my mishap, but the title of the ordinance and section 4 do declare it an emergency. That's a typo or a lack there on new business B of your agenda. It does not outline it as an emergency. However, in the title and, text of the ordinances.
Yeah, I wouldn't think you'd wanna wait 30 days. That's-
Well, I was just going by the fact.
I
it was-
apologize.
That's okay. So this is an emergency, so you would be suspending the rules for ordinance 19-2025, authorizing the village administrator to enter a purchase agreement with US Bank for police radio procurement and declare it an emergency and read this by title only. Do I have a motion to suspend the rules?
So moved.
Motion made by Mr. Babel. Do I have a second?
Second.
Who did that? Sorry. I'm still not hearing real well, Jerry. And, in fact, I was in the doctor's office today. So second is by Ms. Meister. Is there any further discussion? No discussion? Please call the roll, Pam.
Mr. Burns,
Yes.
Miss Angeline,
Yes.
Ms. Meyer,
Yes.
Ms. Meister,
Yes.
Mr. Babel,
Yay.
Ms. Bolton.
Yay.
Motion passes 6-0. Now I need a motion to pass and adopt ordinance number 19-2025, authorizing the village administrator to enter a purchase agreement with US Bank for police radio procurement and declare it an emergency. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Babel,
Second.
second by Ms. Meister. Any further discussion? Any call the roll, please.
Mr. Burns,
Yes.
Miss Angeline,
Yes.
Ms. Meyer,
Yes.
Ms. Meister,
Yes.
Mr. Babel,
Yay.
Ms. Bolton.
Yay.
Motion passes 6-0. Now, we're gonna move on to ordinance number 20-2025. And this is establishing a specialized and restricted enterprise fund. So I would like, Mr. Habig to address that particular ordinance.
The ordinance establishing a specialized and restricted fund within the UAN accounting system to be known as the nuisance light abatement fund. We talked about this in finance committee, and there was some deliberation. The heart of the purpose of this is to create an enterprise fund where 100% of fines from the clean court and BZA go into this dedicated fund until it matures to $10,000. And the reasoning behind that is to ensure a dedicated funding source for the village to abate nuisance properties, clean them up, and release the burden in the future of the general fund, where there doesn't need to be continued, appropriations made to abate properties as they come up. The goal of this, build this fund, and it's a, supplement itself with ongoing fines coming in, abatements coming out, and then let's say we had to put a lien on a property because we abate an issue. When that lien is collected, it would then replenish the abatement fund.
It's just basically cleaning up the money trail on how everything.
But you could look at it, both ways, and I think it's really a matter of how you like your books run. And I know that opinions may vary on that. We discussed this at length in finance committee. I think it's less about cleaning up the books and more about having, memorializing our intent to have a continued dedicated funding source to be able to abate properties.
A lot more sounds to me more transparent than anything.
Well, you're gonna hear from a PS clerk right now, who's gonna express the opposite view.
Oh, okay.
I'm not gonna vote no on it, and I mentioned it in finance. I don't think we have a need for a special fund. Justin disagrees with me, we had a discussion about it. All I'm gonna say is, I'm not gonna oppose it, but I hope we don't start down this trail where we're creating funds, because then it does get out of hand. It's not, when we had mayor's court, when we had a full-fledged police department, we had mayor's court, we tracked everything out of the general fund. We didn't have a special mayor's court fund. It went in the general fund, money was appropriated to run the mayor's court, and it went out. So any extra money that we may have in the mayor's court that went above and beyond what we spent, council could suspend any way it wanted to. It was just extra revenue. So there was a line item in revenue fund that said mayor's court. So we projected potential revenue for mayor's court. It was all done out of general fund. So it can be done either way. And I think the purpose here is that they want a dedicated fund source for liens and abatements and for things down the road. So, okay, we'll do that. I'm just expressing my concern that we start on a path where we're creating special funds that we don't need to create.
Now, does this mean that then any costs associated with this as well would come from that account as well?
No, general fund.
Cost associated with.
I mean, I don't
With
know
mayor's
what costs
court.
there might be, but any, with the clean court, like, I don't know what costs there might be, but
No, you gotta
if we have to
magistrate,
pay
you gotta
to
court.
have somebody clean up somebody's yard, or, I don't know.
Can I give you an example of that? That just happened recently, Stephanie?
Yeah, and like, so shouldn't then the payments for that then come out of this fund too? I mean,
That is the intent behind it. The intent is
After we get $10,000, right?
no, at any point that the fund has enough money where it can pay for that, that's the intent behind this fund, is if we have to pay $500 to a contractor to remove yard waste, it would come out of this abatement fund.
Okay.
If our service department has $200 charge for mowing a lawn, it could come out of this into the general fund.
If the money was in there.
And then ultimately, we're paying it up front. There will be a lien placed on the property. When we recoup it, it'll go back into this abatement fund. And I agree with you totally. I want to consolidate our GL codes as much as possible. The reason that I feel strongly on this is to go back to the conversation about clean court and mayor's courts, the potential for improprieties and trying to enforce and collect fines for profit. By establishing this court, it really highlights that we're not doing this for profit. The fines that we collect are going directly into a dedicated fund that can only be used to abate future nuisances. And with that, it really would take the argument out of anybody's sales to say, you're just citing me so you can pay salaries or give raises. No, 100% of the fines we collect go directly into a restricted fund that are going to be used exclusively to abate future nuisances. And that's why I feel strongly about it. I do understand that it creates an additional GL code. And I just set the record straight. This is not a trend or a pattern that I want to get into. I only
I'm
feel
not
this.
accusing you of that. I'm
Yeah,
just saying.
no, it's a great point, and I'm just saying, I think because it's fine money, having a dedicated fund, just highlights our.
That's fine, but let's be clear. Ed's salary is gonna come out of the general fund. The magistrate's salary is gonna come out of the general fund. The clerk of court salary is gonna come out of the general fund. These radio purchases coming out of the general fund. So this fund isn't necessarily going to cover the total expense. So you're still gonna have general fund expenses for our mayor's court process.
No, we already have those budgeted. Right.
Correct, and we budget them every year. We could budget this, that, but I see what he's saying, and I just wanted to get on the record and say, I just don't want to see this pattern
Like
forming.
having another one for the Christmas
Yes,
talk and having
yes.
another one for
Yeah.
the farmer's market or, okay.
Auditors will generally tell you that we're creating these rights, but we're good, we're good. I didn't want to convolute this like we kind of went through the one, but I just wanted to go on the record.
You mentioned $10,000, so what happens when we get to that threshold?
So outlined in here, when there's a surplus above $10,000, council by motion can elect to take anything above $10,000 and move it into the general fund. That would
Which would
occur.
help cover if there's an expense that
It
we're
could,
just talking about,
at
right?
the time, once the fund matures to 10,000 or more, through motion, you could take surplus money and move it into the general fund.
I'd like to comment just for a second, because Stephanie asked the question, and there's gonna be a motion I'm making that's not on here in just a little bit. We have properties right now that we need to abate. We just cut 100 Mount Neva. The grass was probably up to your chest. Okay, our people went in and did that after Ed had cited. In the Board of Zoning Appeals hearing we had just at the end of last month, there is a gentleman that, I'm not gonna get into where he lives, but he was there in the hearing. And he has, if we charge him every fine, $3,500, okay, on fines, because Ed has cited him and he hasn't abated it himself. Now, they gave him more time to do that. However, okay, if we have to clean it up, which is the next action, I believe the estimate for that is $5,000. It's in that bad a condition. And it's one of the reasons in the last finance meeting, I asked that there be some money set aside, which is gonna be, I'm gonna be asking for 20,000. I don't think we'll spend that. But we cannot let our residents become a nuisance like this. Just the other day, for the second time in less than a year, he has had open sewage running down his driveway into our stormwater system. And he's not getting it fixed like he needs to get it fixed. All right, I was by there today, and he was out there working and looked at me like he's got it stopped. But these are health issues, and that's not the only problem. We got another one over here on Porter Street, okay? And Jerry, I know you know which one I'm talking about, that also needs to be abated. And it's on a foreclosed property, so we're gonna have to clean these things up. And so I just wanna let everybody understand, we're not doing this because we wanna be mean. We are a local government agency with a responsibility to ensure the quality of life of our residents is maintained. Most recently, up on East State, right next to the Legion, we had a significant complaint made by a resident for the nuisance property. It's been a nuisance property for at least 5 years. And Ed has cited and cited and cited. There's been break-ins, there's been fires in there because of the fact that the homeless go in and they haven't secured the property. So at some point, because the village was not functioning from 2020 on, it became the wild, wild west. We want to stop the wild, wild west.
I think we have a duty to the neighbors.
We do.
We have a duty to the neighbors that are living next door to do something, right? It's some of
And you
these
got some
properties.
areas up in Whiskey that I.
Some people, some will cooperate with you, and that's the good thing about Ed. He sends a letter and some of them will comply.
Yep.
It's the ones that stubbornly don't comply or maybe can't afford to fix it that will end up down in our system.
See, and that's, I agree that we need to have these cleaned up for the neighbors, but in the scenarios where you have 90-year-old Ethel and, like, how are we working with?
Well, mayor's court and magistrates, they always work with that.
Okay. In good conscience, $5,000 fine, some 9-year-old woman who
The
doesn't.
magistrate, in the past, when we had the magistrate, they took all kinds of considerations into
Okay.
the fact. So I see what you're saying, but I don't see that being an issue there.
And I have no idea why these, so I don't know the backstory of that piece, but.
How are we going to make sure the people in the village understand that, we're not doing this to make money? Because we talked about the first ordinance where it's not being used to make money, but to take care of things. And now we're talking about we want to have a special fund to put money in. So how do we get the villages to understand what we're gonna use it for?
I think there's a couple of ways that can happen. One is the video that's going to be on our website. Number two, I can actually take a section of that and I can get that clip into a video with a letter email like I was sending out before. There's gonna be other communication that we're gonna have to send out to our residents by mail. I will tell you the best way is word of mouth. As soon as people come in and they have to face the court, they will talk, other people will talk. And that will spread. And then there'll be in September, if things haven't been paid, then we'll be passing an ordinance and sending it down to the auditor. And we can determine that has to be paid in the first half of taxes. We can, as a council, we can say to the auditor, we want you to charge in the first half of the year the full amount, or we can spread it out over two payments. But once those things start happening, which used to happen in this bill, it stopped happening. Okay, and my comment to Justin was that, yeah, this is gonna cost money, but we're either serious about providing services to our residents or we're not. Personally, that's gotta be a decision each of you make. My view is one of the reasons I ran on zoning and cleaning up the village. And anybody that got my literature, which I delivered it to most residents in the village, some up to 5 times, they already know where I stand on that.
I think too, most of these fines, Stephanie, are gonna be small fines.
Okay, yeah, they're fine. I'm like,
I mean, we start
$5,000.
throwing out figures to totally get junk or board up, whatever. We're talking about, for the most part, small, reasonable fines. And we're not gonna have any trouble justifying what we paid for a magistrate, a clerk of courts, whatever. That this is not gonna subsidize our general fund.
Not at all. It's
And
going,
in fact, we're gonna be spending money to help clean up
That's
this
exactly
village.
correct.
So we will not have too much trouble showing that if there's ever any question.
And I'll just point out that $5,000, that was one of the first cases to be heard by the BZA, and the reason that was the first case heard by the BZA is it's such a chronic
It's the
and
worst.
prolonged issue. I mean, it's a bad issue, and there's been multiple citations over multiple years, no compliance, and honestly, it's worse. So, and that's the potential part.
and I agree with one, most of them are gonna be small fines that people.
And that's only if people won't do what they're being asked to do, cut their grass. I had neighbors on both sides of me because they're rentals, letting their grass grow. I mean, I was dodging snakes to take my garden out. And they are cut, they're both cut now, but I worked through Ed. So Ed got that taken care of. It was something that never went to court. So I think we need to keep that in mind too, that Ed, our zoning enforcement officer, I don't want to say officer, use that with the other, but he's the one sends out the letters, and for the most part, people comply.
Are there set fines, so like if your grass is so high, this is your
It's
fine?
set
or-
it's set in the International Property Maintenance Code that we've adopted. Those are gonna have to be reviewed. But I would tell you this, if you were to ask Ed how his 2 years in the village has been, he would tell you very frustrating. Because there's been no avenue for enforcement.
Right.
Everything Linda just talked
It's
about
voluntary.
was
right.
voluntary. And it becomes very frustrating when 80% of the people are just sort of blowing you off.
Right.
And 20% are actually doing what they should do.
So the BZA doesn't have to say, well, this is your fine, you told them to find it.
Now, you've got a fine schedule,
Okay.
and that won't be the BZA for that. The clean court jury, same people, but they'll have a schedule.
So I think we're getting a little off of the
Yeah.
actual ordinance, which was a stabilize, and I apologize, I'm the one that led us there. And I apologize for that, but do we want to address this ordinance that we're trying to get adopted to establish a specialized and restricted enterprise fund?
We're gonna have to suspend the rules first.
Yeah, but I just want to get us back on track.
And that is what we need to
Go
do.
too far off.
This, I
Thank you
don't
for
see in
reining
the
us in.
language. No emergency on this one.
Mr. Burns.
Go ahead.
I'm just trying to remember one of the nuances we discussed in finance. Like if we ever did successfully build up this fund to past 10,000, we did reserve the option to get out of the general fund. But another option, I believe, was to pay for related expenses related to, public works that are cleaning something up in that area. And that's another way to say that this isn't off-task money that's being siphoned into the general fund. Is that correct understanding?
Yes, section 2, it's dedicated to nuisance and blight abatement efforts, to improve property standards, ensure compliance, protect the health, safety, and welfare of residents. So it does give flexibility, but it still outlines the intent.
So we could, for example, that's flexible enough, like some sidewalk was really busted up there. Instead of going through a whole process, we could just pay the $80 for that segment.
Potentially. Or if we
Things
had,
like maybe
or if
like-
we had a vacant home structure that if the fund was mature enough and we wanted to acquire that, make it a park or use it for something else, we could use this fund to do that as well.
So consider yourself nuanced.
Do I have a motion to suspend the rules for ordinance number 20-25 and read by title only, establishing a specialized and restricted enterprise fund?
So moved.
Motion made by Ms. Dalton. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Ms. Meister. Any further discussion? Penny, please call the roll.
Mr. Burns, Ms. Angeline,
Yes.
Ms. Meyer,
Yes.
Ms. Meister,
Yes.
Mr. Babel,
Yes.
Ms. Bolton.
Yay.
Motion passes 6-0. Now I need a motion to pass and adopt ordinance 20-2025, establishing a special eyes and restricted enterprise fund. This is not an emergency, which means it would go into effect, I think, 30 days after its adoption. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Motion by Mrs. Bolton, second by Ms. Meister. Any further discussion? Please call the roll.
Mr. Burns,
Yes.
Ms. Angeline,
Yes.
Ms. Meyer,
Yes.
Ms. Meister,
Yes.
Mr. Babel,
Yay.
Ms. Bolton.
Motion
Yay.
passed. Okay, now we're gonna move on to ordinance 21-2025. And this is repealing an ordinance 10-2009. And just so the residents know, we've had all of our ordinances codified by legal to make sure that things are legal. Our village administrator and our attorney have been reviewing those. There's gonna be more of these coming. So you want to give them the background of this, just?
An ordinance repealing ordinance number 10-2020 or 2009 and enacting a new weed and grass control ordinance. It's part of our continued work with Ed, our zoning code enforcement official, and our law director. This came up with some recent violations of weed and grass control, and Rob and I read it. The ordinance in some areas is convoluted. In other areas, the current ordinance no longer aligns with the way we intend to handle and abate the issue. So it's pretty self-explanatory. We're looking to repeal 10-2009 and re-adopt a new weed and grass control ordinance that aligns better with our intent and how we're going to implement and execute enforcement.
So I have a question about section 3. It says the property owner, occupant, or responsible party. How would we know who that is?
So Ed looks that up on the auditor's office.
So it's the owner.
Well, unless there's another agreement. So let's say that let's say we reach out to the owner and the owner says, well, I have a lease agreement, and my lease agreement says that the leasee is responsible for it.
And then they would provide that agreement so that we.
They could. Generally, it will be the property owner. We just list that because there are cases where it may not be the case.
But in the end, the property owner is responsible. If the person he's renting to doesn't cut the grass, in the end, whether he's got an agreement or not, he has to abide by our laws and ordinances, correct? So he is liable.
Any other questions? There are no other questions. Once again, this is not an emergency, but I would need a motion to suspend the rule. And that would be for ordinance, and go back over here, ordinance 21-2025, and read by title only, repealing ordinance 10-2009, grass and weed control, and establishing new legislation encompassing its scope. Do I have a motion to suspend the rules?
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Babel. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Ms. Meyer. Any further discussion? Then please call the roll.
Mr. Burns, Ms. Angeline,
Yes.
Ms. Meyer,
Yes.
Ms. Meister,
Yes.
Mr. Babel,
Yeah.
Ms. Bolt.
Yay.
Motion passes 6-0. And now I need a motion to pass and adopt ordinance 21-2025, repealing ordinance 10-2009, grass and weed control, and establishing new legislation encompassing its scope. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Babel. Second. Second by Ms. Angeline. Any further discussion? Please call the roll.
Mr. Burns,
Yes.
Ms. Angeline,
Yes.
Ms. Meyer,
Yes.
Ms. Meister,
Yes.
Mr. Babel,
Yeah.
Ms. Bolton.
Yay.
Motion passes 6-0. That will go in effect in 30 days. We'll move on now to the administrator's report. Mr. Havey, could you sort of give them an overview of what you've been up to? Sure.
I'll try to keep this brief.
Yeah, and he has 3 minutes on teasing.
An ongoing project that I can report we've completed, and this is a collaborative effort with Rob and I. We completed the AM Legal Code Review, and we returned that to American Legal Publishing for final processing. Some of you may have seen it. It was the last year. American Legal received all of our ordinances dating back to 2009, I believe.
It was
Four.
20 years back from last year,
2004.
so it would've been,
Four.
Yeah, 2004. And Miss Williams will know because she, yeah, she had the mountainous task of finding all of those, scanning them, and getting them to AM Legal. And thank you again for that. Once she did that, it was assigned to an American Legal Publishing employee. They went through, built it into their framework, their basic code, and then they go through and they outline. A lot of it's just questions. Some of it's a legal review of what may not be legal anymore based off of case law decisions or other policy. And so Rob and I went through the entire manual first to make sure that everything was legally compliant, read through the report. And also we went through some of our ongoing efforts to figure out how we're going to implement and execute ordinances that have been on the books that we've ignored for some time. That took a lot of time. It's now back at American Legal, and I expect that in the next 2 months, we should receive a final copy, at which time council will have an ordinance in front of you to adopt that in its entirety.
Will that be published on our website at some point then?
Yes.
Kind of like how prior revised code, you can go in and find anything.
It's actually, if you go to American Legal Publishing and look up Cleves now, you'll see that we're listed there. It's their general code.
Okay.
But once this is complete, there'll be a hyperlink on our website where you can click it, and it'll take you to a catalog, full book of all of our ordinances.
I believe it'll be searchable.
It will be searchable, and that updates regularly. So after, council meetings end, Penny takes the signed, executed ordinances and resolutions and scans those to American Legal, and then they update it on an ongoing basis.
Which means every resident in the village will have access, they're gonna know whether or not it's legal or not legal. We get a lot of questions from residents, what are my rights? It'll be all spelled out, very easy to find.
And so just kind of a subsection of that, one of the ordinances that's currently on the book, and I know it's been brought up a couple times over my tenure, is the solicitor and vendors ordinance and how we regulate solicitors and vendors in the village, whether that's somebody that wants to do business and set up shop or somebody that wants to go door to door and solicit. We've had that ordinance on the book for some time. But I've worked with Rob and Ms. Williams, we've taken it over at some point. We've discussed how do we implement next like that. So in the near future, we'll have a list for a no-knock list for residents that want to opt out, that don't want solicitors to knock on their door. There'll be an application, when they fill that out, we'll process it. They'll have a sticker that they can put on their door or window, and it's serialized, so we'll have an ongoing list. When we get a solicitor's permit, they'll get the list. And also they'll know if they see the sticker, don't knock. So there's certain protections, and that's part of the review we did. So there's certain criteria that it's like a resident doesn't want you to knock. You can. So that's part of the reason we need this list in the application. So they specifically outline that they don't want you to go on their property, knock their door. And then there'll be an application coming out for solicitors and vendors. That'll also be on our website. So residents can sign up if they don't wish they have solicitors knock on their door. And also vendors have a clear avenue for the application and how they file it. I also researched, developed, and drafted the Clean Port ordinance, which we adopted. Another initiative is working on implementing our handicap parking ordinance that we passed a few months ago. Again, that's in the implementation phase. I'm working on a letter that'll go out to residents that currently have handicap parking on street in front of their residence, and we'll be doing a total reevaluation of that and reapplication for on-street handicap parking placards, signage. Worked with Councilman Angeline on continued planning for the summer market event. So at this point, we've created a new special event application for all of our special events, a vendor and solicitor application that will be used in the interim until we pass the final one. And also we created a village indemnification and hold harmless agreement that we'll use for vendors and contractors of the village that we weren't executing before. Some HR things here. Coordinated a renewal of the employee benefits with Jefferson Health. We hosted a lunch last week for our employees. It was a lunch and learn where a member of Jefferson Health that provides our benefits came out, gave an overview, did questions and answers with our employees. And I'm working with them right now to get their enrollments done by the end of the month. I attended my Center for Local Government Leadership Academy actually today. This class was focused on best practices for human resources and employee evaluations. Some good knowledge I'm glad to have. Waterworks, I'm sure all of our residents have seen their most recent bills at this point and also received a copy of their consumer contract for water service. I put out a lot of literature on this. The intent behind the consumer contract for water is really just to make sure that we're following best practices as a public utility, making sure that we outline our responsibilities, our fee structure, but also let consumers know what their expectations are. Also, by capturing email addresses, it gives us the ability to provide your bill electronically via email rather than snail mail at the post office, which for some reason in Cleves is a chronic issue. Almost every month we have issues where consumers will call and say they didn't receive their bill. I assure you that's not a waterworks issue. It gets lost at the post office. There's been times where entire streets and neighborhoods have not received their bill, and we have sent them. We don't know where they go. Sometimes they arrive late. Sometimes they go to the wrong location, and sometimes they never arrive at all. So by doing the consumer contract and getting email addresses, it'll just be a form of redundancy to make sure that you get it electronically and in the mail. And if you get your water bill electronically and you didn't get it in the mail, might be an alert to call the post office and see if you're missing anything else.
Can I ask a question about the use of the word contract versus could we have worded it in agreement? Or maybe caused less, anxiety for people when they would think they were signing a contract? I mean, is there a reason why we use that word in contract instead of maybe just a utility agreement type of a thing? I'm just curious, because I know it causes some anxiety.
Yeah, we ran this through legal, and it's legally compliant, and a lot of this is mirrored off of other public utilities templates that we looked at. I can't necessarily answer why we called it a contract and not an agreement. I understand.
Well, some people are hesitant to sign their contract. What am I signing, you know? An agreement is a little more palpable.
Yes, ma'am.
Why do they want our social security number and our birth date? My husband does not want to put that all information down.
Sure, absolutely. So, yeah, clear the air on the social security number. That, again, we mirrored this off of other water utilities, and that was criteria that was listed. So we mirrored that. Your social security number is not required on this form. So you do not need to provide your social security number. If you did, we will not do anything with it.
And
It will be
birthday,
protected.
and birthday.
The reason for your
Are you
birthday,
gonna send us a gift?
well,
Yeah.
potentially,
A discount.
a lot of this goes off information that's required to send an individual to collections. But with your birth date, if you're above a certain age, you meet certain other requirements, you are eligible for an MSD reduction in fees. And so by having your birthday, the consumer's birth date, we'll be able to verify if you meet that age requirement.
And is it mandatory to sign this contract, or what if we just don't do it?
There'll be future discussions on that. I do believe at this point, we're giving everybody till the end of the year. My intent, if it's not signed by the end of the year, is to recommend some sort of surcharge for consumers that don't sign the agreement. But ultimately, that'll be discussed in council later.
I think if they're getting us for their birthday, I think a reason should be listed on that. Providing your birthday may give you a savings of some kind on MSD. I mean, it seems a little invasive, especially with the social security number. Even though we don't really want it, it was on the form and if we have received any, I would say to protect us, let's black it out on the forms that were sent in if someone provided that number. Black it out, we don't need it.
It'll be protected in the same manner we protect your financial information. But to black out thousands of social security numbers.
We only have 1,000 households. How many people have signed that?
Well, we have consumers outside the village.
Oh, that's right, okay. Well, just protect yourself, because that number should not, once it's in our hands, then it becomes a burden on us to make sure that it's protected information. And now that we've got it, let's make darn sure that we've protected it. That's all I'm asking.
Will do. Some infrastructure, and grant.
I don't know.
The birthday information has to be on block. Special places for them to go.
All files we have are locked in our record room. And as we increase our security, they'll also be they're under lock and key in our records room. And they'll also be under 24/7 video surveillance with all of our other protected documents. So they'll be protected in the same manner that criminal justice information is.
But they are public records, so if somebody comes in and requests them, we have to provide them, correct?
Sure, and just like my,
But you block it, yeah,
just like my employee file has this information on it, we would redact it in the same manner we
Okay.
redact any other record. Yes, sir.
Probably, everybody in here
has received a notice saying that their information's been hacked. Personal information, social security numbers, birthdays. But if someone were, the one time somebody in Cleves, you would get hacked, somebody gets financially hit pretty hard because of the hack. Is Cleves gonna have, what's our security to protect Cleves? What kind of liability will Cleves have for exposing this information or making it, vulnerable?
If your question's aligned to the social security number, it'll never be inputted electronically, but through our insurance provider, our general liability insurance provider, they set guidelines for IT, infrastructure and firewalls, and our IT vendor is ensured that we're compliant and all of that. So if there was a hack or data breach, we have the mechanisms in place through, cybersecurity to ensure that our insurance company will cover us.
And our limits are?
Off the top of my head, I can't tell you what our limits are. Is it per instance, per event? I can look that up for you.
But we're not putting the social security numbers in the billing system, correct? It's on the form, but we're not putting it in the system.
Correct, and none of them have been inputted at this
And won't be put
point.
in.
The information will be inputted, but security numbers will not.
Okay, that's all I
And
know.
I may have missed this. What do we do with the forms after we input that information?
They'll be
Shredding.
filed in our records room,
Okay.
at the administration building, along with, historical police records and other village records. That's under lock and key, restricted access, and it'll be under 24/7 surveillance monitoring.
What if we don't put social security numbers and birthdays, and just everything else?
That's fine.
You're not required to put your social security number.
Okay.
Any other questions on that matter? I also continued TIP research, some annexation research. And specifically, I researched TIPs and how they can apply towards preferred grading for OPWC skip grant opportunities. So what we learned is we don't necessarily need a dedicated street levy to get the extra points on an OPWC skip grant, as long as we have a TIF in place that provides dedicated funding, tax funding for that initiative. So at this point, we have Harmony Fields, which covers Porter Street, Finley, Cooper, areas like that, with the new development going on in Coleman Woods. It's our intent to place a TIF there, and that would cover the roads of Edgefield, Laurelwood, New Pine, and all the other artery streets.
I have a question to ask you on that. Because I think I spoke to you today about a resident who was concerned about the condition of Edgefield. How long in the future are we talking as far as this Coleman Woods can actually score on the grant? We're talking 6 months, 6 years, how long are we talking?
Really, that's really outside of the village control. What I can tell you is the developer's eager to move on the development. We've approved the plat, they've marketed it, and my last conversation with him, he has a strong appetite for people to purchase and build there. So it's our intent to put the TIP in place before there's improvement made, so we can capture the entirety of the improvement. So day one, once there's improvements made, we'll begin collecting funds. That's it.
And at that point, we would be eligible for a grant that we could apply to Edgefield.
Well, we're eligible regardless. It's just when it comes to state funding, state grants for roadways, there's a scoring matrix. And if you have a dedicated funding source, whether that be a street levy or a TIP or some other sort of dedicated tax funding, you get 10 points on your application, which increases your likelihood for award, but it doesn't ensure that you're going to be awarded. I've continued working on preparing our economic impact CDBG grant application for 2026. We discussed that at Finance Committee this month. I have a scheduled meeting with our engineer, just outline next steps and additional information. I attended Miami Township trustee meeting. I discussed the Jordan water line. Granted approval for them to move forward with their project to move the water main on their park development project and also extend it down Jordan Road, which gives at least 7 homes the potential to tap in to the village water system. And finally, I learned today that we were awarded an $800,000 grant for an Addison water line tie-in for the potential to provide them bulk water in the future. I don't have anything else to discuss at this time. I was out of the office today and I haven't yet spoke to OEPA or RCAP, the company we worked with, or most importantly, Addison's officials. So I'll be having ongoing conversations in the next coming weeks with that. I'll update you as it moves forward. We had our first Board of Zoning Appeals meeting, talked about that. We'll have another one on the 3rd Tuesday of this month and every 3rd Tuesday of the month moving forward. With that, we've coordinated with the service department, code enforcement officer. We've completed 2 property abatements in the last 2 weeks. Both of those were related to weed and grass control. They've both been referenced, one on Porter Street and one on Mount Evo. Continue to work towards implementing our local law enforcement, both working with Communication Center, Leeds, RCIC, procuring police radios, and also ordering citation materials that are required to do so. And the last thing I have is I continue to work with the Ohio Auditor's Office to locate and provide some historical documents that they requested as part of their internal review. And that's all I have. If anyone has.
Is that all?
Sorry, I'm busy.
No, you made my report a little quicker.
Yeah.
Schools going down Tuesdays?
Did I say? I'm sorry. Good catch. Third Thursday of every month. It's not moving. I'm sorry. Yes, it will stay the 3rd Thursday of every month.
Okay.
5:15.
I believe it's at 5:30 currently.
It's 15 for us.
5:15 is just so you have time to receive your packets and review any material. It actually kicks off at 5:30. Now that may move, and it's really subject to your availability.
So it's Thursday.
It is Thursday. I apologize.
That's okay, because I just.
Scared me
did
for
our-
a minute.
I just did our calendar with our website.
Yeah, it started with a T. Now, when we do implement the clean court and ultimately Harris Court, depending on your availability, it may start at 5 and go until about 6:30. But right now, 5:30 for these Thursdays.
That's open to the public.
Yes, they're all public here.
And they'll all be posted. And they'll all be on our calendar on Thursdays now instead of Tuesdays.
Were there any other questions for me? Thank you.
I have my mayor's report and it's much shorter.
Promise?
Right. So, most of you all know, should have received, door hangers about our Get It to the Curb Day. And it is also on our website. I want to thank Don Richardson, Mary Angeline, Penny Williams, Joe Morano, and his family, and Judy Melchia. They delivered the event door hangers throughout the village. We may have missed a few houses along Mount Evo, but they worked very hard on their own time to ensure a 99% delivery rate to all households in the village. And Penny has been working overtime on her own time, believe it or not. She's not charging the village for this. Penny, why don't you tell them a little bit about how this has gone with people who contacted you? That cuts off tomorrow night at 6 p.m.
So I've been responding to emails when I get them, just so I don't get backlogged. So sometimes I'm emailing people at midnight. I'm CCing Chuck on them. I have 6 a.m. emails. I've just been, whenever I get an email, I respond. And sometimes it's more than one email because they might not have included their address or something important. So I put quite a bit of time into it, but it's been really fun. So far we have about 100 households right now on the list, so been very good. Good response.
And a ton of stuff.
Tons of stuff.
Oh, the Boltons have half a garage full. I had to text Chuck and say, is there a limit? Because I didn't know if I was gonna have to talk neighbors into calling and registering so we can get some of our shit.
We've had a
There
good
is no
response.
limit.
So you do have to register.
You have to pre-register. And, let me just say this, E-Scrap does a tremendous job of working with us. And they're located out, in Whitewater Township, Cleves address on Dry Fork Road. And, so people out there that are having computers, we're gonna be sending a letter out, a confirmation to make sure this information's in there too. But if you have a computer, you wanna make sure that your data is secure. They actually destroy the data. They will give you a certificate upon request. What I've been asking residents to do is to tape on the computer their name and their address, okay? Because we will have to pay out of our grant. There is a cost for that certificate, but that's all covered under our $5,000 grant. And I spoke to a resident the other day on tires. They are also delivering, Hamilton County is delivering for 5 days a tire dumpster that will be down at our maintenance building. And all those are gonna be recycled too. And so that's gonna be there for 5 days, but what we pick up at the household, we will put in that dumpster. Okay, and it's a pretty good sized dumpster. And I had one gentleman tell me, well, I recycle it by cutting up, putting in my garbage. The idea behind this is to cut out from the lower, not higher, okay? So they'll make sure everything gets recycled and it is environmentally sound. So
But
that's
we can't
good.
put tires out though, right, Chuck?
They can put tires out.
Out in the curb.
Just please don't put tractor tires out. It's easy to be forced to get. But yes, run down by the curb. I think John talked to, I know Penny did, talk to B&B Auto, and I think they have over 200 tires there. So it's gonna be interesting to see how many of these tires, and we've gotten a lot of people scheduling tire pickups. They usually sit around your house, and same thing with TV sets. We've had people have up to 5 TV sets.
Do we need to let you know that individually, how many
Well,
TV sets?
you really don't, as long as we got a good sense of what you have. But like, for example, in Porter Street, I've got one house that has 2 washers, 2 dryers, and I think a refrigerator, you know, so, and what happens is people don't want to pay Lowe's or whoever to take it away, so it sits around the house. These will all be recycled, all the Freon will be taken out, and however they dispose of that, all that is paid for by our grant. So,
Okay,
so we're looking for a
I've got
very,
TVs, but I didn't put a number down.
but it's fine. But it's really been better. We mailed it last year, and it's been better by the fact that we did the door hangers. I have another cleanup day scheduled. I talked to Justin about this today. We're probably gonna have 2 companies working with us. This is, I'm gonna call it Operation Cleves Cleanup Day. It'll be on Saturday, June 28th. I am gonna be asking for some volunteers because the dumpsters will be there for a specific amount of time from 9 until 2. There's gonna be at least 2 of them up at the water department on College Street. And yes, you'll have to bring it there, but they will take mattresses and they'll take things that you can't really get rid of. They won't be taking paint, they won't be taking oil, used oil, or any of that stuff. But things that can be thrown away, old furniture, just different stuff you want to get rid of around the house, you don't want to do a yard sale. That will go into a dumpster, and that will not be paid for by our.
Is that the only date, the 28th?
That's the 28th.
That's the only date, Joe?
That's the only day we're doing. gotta get that information out.
And that's
You said
the
it's
first
not
day.
paid for the grant, who is it paid by?
It's paid by the village.
That's
And
the
do you
first
know
day
what
of
that
the
cost
summer
is gonna
market.
be?
Yeah, it's gonna be right around, I wanna say $2,700.
Okay,
So,
has that been appropriated?
well, that's where I think Mr. Haley comes in as an authority to approve things up to $7,000.
Yeah, but we still have to have the money
I think we got my,
appropriated.
well, Cindy, what's it gonna take to move that in?
Do you have a line item currently for that kind of?
No, but we can make that
Okay.
happen. I'll get with
I'm
Justin.
just asking the question, because it's the first time.
Yeah, well, we've gotta help our residents get their properties.
Oh, I'm not disputing that.
And what is the time of that again?
That is gonna be from 9 AM to 2 PM. And that, if it turns out that that's gonna change, I will let everybody know that, but that's tentatively where it's set.
That's first day of the summer market.
It's the first day of the, you know, it's something else I'm gonna be talking about first day for them too. You know, unfortunately, people are gonna have to choose what they're gonna do. We're like being a middle school student saying, I wanna play
You can do both.
basketball,
Yeah,
baseball,
that's,
be in league club, they're gonna have to make a choice.
So I know we don't have anything for paint, but, and I think I emailed, Matthew 25 Ministries, they take paint donations, so we could even do in the future, we had just transport.
If they would have
where we
called
could
me back, we already would have done it.
Also, that's the.
I contacted them, they did not call me back. But I'm gonna contact them again,
Then
because
it's used for good
we
cause.
also have the ability, and this would not cost the district, the village anything that I'm aware of, for hazardous waste, and I'm talking like, old, Roundup and stuff like that that surround the house. But it's pretty hard to pull all this stuff together. That date on Saturday, June 28th may change, but right now, that's the tentative date.
Is your concern that with the parking related to College Street there? Or the fact that it's
dumpster
flash?
thing?
so,
I can arrange for that day that we put no parking on College Street to open up
okay, yeah.
additional space for patrons and the dumpsters. That'll help
And that's, you're talking College is the street behind
the back end. where
yeah,
the
where the parking spot is.
We could actually move it if we need to, so we could put them in that parking lot.
Where, for the parking lot.
I'm talking about in front of the water.
We can figure the logistics of
Yeah.
where they'll go out. I'll coordinate with the mayor, but I'll make sure that we have the road clear. I don't know that we wanna put them there, but we can talk about it
Yeah, 'cause they have a big truck one in there,
and where.
in front of the,
We will make the adjustments to ensure that.
Mary, I'm trying to get that date changed, if I can get it changed, but I haven't signed anything with anybody yet,
okay,
but I felt with us doing this other thing, it'll be easier if we start making announcements,
Yeah,
sending
I
emails out.
agree, yeah.
And, hopefully, we can get some things delivered, not as expensive as the last one, but we really need to help our residents get rid of stuff, so it's not laying out in their yard. We can take yard waste if we designate a dumpster just for that purpose. But I haven't decided whether that's what I want to do yet. I've got a couple other announcements. This involves the village of Anniston, also on Saturday, June 28th. They called me today and they have invited me, not me, but everybody in Cleves to come to their Addison Community Park grand opening. And they're also inviting anybody in Cleves that wants to participate, what's called Addie Town Shootout. That's on June 27th and 28th.
We don't wanna lose any taxpayers.
And so
Might be basketball.
basketball. Yeah, it's a basketball tournament.
Okay, I'm glad you clarified that.
So,
Talking about the Wild Wild West a little bit ago, so.
yeah, that's not my title, that's their title. All right. Then I also want to announce, because it's just, I don't have enough time, but we're gonna have to cancel our, so we're gonna need to cancel the Ohio 250 meeting that we had scheduled because it conflicts directly with our pickup. And I will be physically out with the maintenance department, picking those things up on those two. Now, a more somber note. I put back on our website today the state of the village report, and Cindy and I were in communication today. For those of you that are here, for those of you at home, we have to be looking very carefully at putting a levy on very soon. I'd like to explain why. And the why is primarily we're running out of general fund money. So if you can understand just a few things, we have a fire levy. Okay, that's a permanent fire levy, and it brings in $136,163 a year. This past year, Miami Township wanted us to pay $412,000 plus on our fire contract. Through the efforts of our village administrator, they were able to get that down to $360,000 for the year one. But I want our public to understand, even with that, our general fund is going to have to incur a cost for fire coverage of $223,847 in fiscal year 2025. In 2026, our cost is going up to $381,600, and now the general fund will be $245,437. And then when it comes to year 2027, and this is a 5-year contract, didn't take it out that far, it'll go to $401,634, and our general fund will have to supplement that by $265,471. That is a required responsibility. And there is no way anybody in Miami Township or Cleves is going to escape. You're not going to escape fire coverage. You're going to have to pay for it. Our friends up here in Brunswick Way are going to see a rather significant increase in the Miami Township taxes to pay for the levy that just passed. They put a levy on. The Village of Cleves chose not to put a levy on because we were really not sure what our budget was. And those of you that are here know we had a $7 million levy on in 2023 and it failed. What you may not remember is back in 2021, we had a renewal levy that failed by 4 votes. And that gave everybody in the Village of Cleves a tax cut. Yeah, you can go and track it right on the auditor's site. The village lost right around $270,000 a year. And that is one of the reasons why our general fund is depleting. Now moving on to the sheriff's contract. We have a levy that brings in $80,288. In 2025, this year, we will have to supplement that to pay for the sheriff's patrol. Actually, they're not patrols, they're police protection. $135,239. 2026, we will be supplementing that by another $147,087. And in 2027, it'll be almost $200,000. So I had Ms. Ozer pull together some things for me today. And there will be information coming out in writing to our residents involving what I'm saying here tonight. So I wanted her to take a look at what our general fund balances were starting in 2023. We had a balance of $1,336,529. Okay, in 2024, our balance was $1,636,529. $635,095, it went up. But it only went up because the village sold, and we have sort of stashed it away as not something we're going to hit of $400,000. In 2025, that is going to decrease to $1,412,345.07, and there's going to be it going down from that point on, although I think we do have one possible uptick. As far as our expenditures, as of May 31st in 2023, it was $202,947. And in 2024, it was, that's not correct. That's without the first.
$265,000.
How much was it? Sam?
$265,000.
That's in 2024.
Uh-huh.
And that includes the paying fire after 30.
Right, we paid in, it was after, the first half of the fire in 23 and 24 were paid in June.
So that's what 126,000. You really have to add it on.
Right, you gotta add that on there, right?
So right now, we've already paid our fire, and I think our
The first half,
expenditures this year has been like $447,855, and a good part of that
180,000 was the
is
fire
the
contract.
fire contract. So we're controlling our expenditures as best we can, but we cannot, everything that we're talking about costs money. Just the flood alone cost the village right around an additional $20,000 to clean up that park. So government is not free. You know, and we're talking about a mayor's court, we're talking about a zoning appeals court, we're talking about abating property. We're actually doing the business of government. And what our residents are gonna have to look at is what we looked at as a council. And we're looking at a possible, not been decided, for a safety levy. We have not decided exactly what that's gonna be, how many mills, but it's not gonna be 7 mills like you faced last time. And I believe that 7 mil, and I did ask the auditor, that's a long story. We've been having problems with Hamilton County taking our email. Somehow it's getting lost. It happened with the sheriff's department, it's happened with the planning and zoning department, and it has happened also with their recycling. They just, for whatever reason, they can't find it. Same thing happened with the auger. But we bring in $82,000 per mill. Okay, that's what we're bringing in. So if you take a 7 mil levy, that's what the village was asking for, and they have confirmed it was based on new valuation. You multiply 7 times 80, you're looking at $560,000. That's what, in a ballpark figure of what it would have brought in had it passed. It did not pass. It failed horribly. And I believe part of it is because the residents didn't know what was going on in the village, they didn't understand it. It certainly wasn't because Jerry, who was the chairperson, didn't try to get the information out. But everything I feel was done in reverse. They decided to go put it on and never talk to the residents. So I'm announcing here tonight that we're going to be having a public hearing. The whole council is welcome to attend, where the finance committee normally would fall. And that's going to be on the 25th of June at 7 o'clock. And we're going to basically answer any questions our residents have. We're going to have the information about what a 4 mil or a 4.5 mil or a 3.3 mil, I think.
3.5.
3.5 mil, what that would generate. So our goal is to make sure everybody knows up front what our budget is, why the money is going down, or our balances will be going down, and I think Cindy, you projected that we would probably be out of money by
29.
2029. That sounds like a long ways away. It's not a long ways away. And even if you have a tax increase, you gotta keep in mind that we lost 229,000. So if you bring in, if you did a 4 mil, and that brought in a total of $320,000, it's only gonna be really an increase of about $50,000. Now that's tough when people are struggling to pay grocery bills, their house, their taxes. It's very tough. But if we don't pass a levy, we are going to go out of business. And just so you know, they passed legislation that if you're not providing police and fire, you can be forced into dissolution. And that is something I don't think our residents really want to do. Because I think then you're signing yourself up to basically being an unincorporated area, and we would just be part of Miami Township. And I predict your taxes will be higher then than what they would be if we just took care of our business here. So there's going to be a letter going out, and there's going to be people that won't be happy, and I understand that. I do want to correct something that my opponent in the last mayoral election made. He made the statement that I was against the last levy. That is not true, but I did not endorse it. And there's a reason I didn't endorse it. I voted for it. I didn't campaign against it, but I did not know for sure if we were getting the straight scoop. And as it turned out, we weren't getting the straight scoop. Doesn't mean the village didn't need money, but they didn't need a 7 mil levy. They did not need that at that time. That's my mayor's report. I'll answer any questions anybody might have.
You said that's June 25th?
I couldn't hear you.
June 25th?
Yes,
Wednesday.
June 25th will be the public hearing.
it's the normal finance committee meeting and we're gonna make it a public hearing about
And if possible, I'd like to have the council there.
that. Yeah,
That's,
he said, you're welcome to come and I'm gonna encourage you to come because you're gonna be asked to vote because we have a deadline of August 5th, I believe, August 6th, something like that. So we're gonna be, once we get the certification numbers from Hamilton County for a 3.5, 4.0, 4.5, that's the first step. We have to get that certification and we need that in order to apply and have it put on the ballot. So you're gonna be asked to make a decision. So I want you to be as informed as you can possibly be. I want to simplify a little bit and say that currently the general fund is subsidizing both police and fire.
A lot, yes.
A lot. Because the cost of those services have gone up since the fire and police continuing levies were put on the books. So we're not asking for a general fund levy because if we free up that money that we're subsidizing for the safety services levy, which would cover both police and fire, we will free up money in the general fund to start considering things like fixing streets and other kinds of things, revitalization grant that might need seed money from us. So every penny that comes in on that safety services levy will go toward police and fire. That's what we're asking for. We still might have to subsidize a little, especially next year or the year after. But I want to make sure that that's conveyed, that we've kind of in finance has talked about a safety services levy. So every penny will go toward police and fire protection.
which is mandated. We have to provide that to be available.
And I think most people want that.
Yeah.
I mean, if you ask them what their priorities are, police and fire are probably the top two. So I don't think we're asking for anything, out of line. And, once we get those certification amounts, we wanted options. So we didn't just certify one amount, we wanted to certify a couple, 3 of them, so that we have options. The council has options.
The other thing I'm gonna ask our residents to consider in that letter is we do need to have at some point, we're gonna need to have a committee that's willing to serve as a organized pack. Because once the council votes on something, our hands are pretty tied.
You can't promote it.
We cannot promote it. In fact, there's even legislation in right now that we can't even communicate about it. That hasn't passed yet. I believe within 30 days of the election day. So whatever we're gonna do, we've gotta have our residents, hopefully a person would volunteer to be the treasurer, and there would be a committee that would be willing to help put out signs and do communication. And if you have a PAC, we cannot spend any village taxpayer money on a levy. Everything has to be raised through donations. For example, with the Miami Township levy, I can tell you everybody, because it's a public record, who contributed money towards that levy. I was one, okay? There were others. And what I'm saying is, that's how you get the signs, you pay for the signs. It's gotta be done that way, or you cannot pay for taxpayer dollars. Am I correct, Ms. Oger?
But yeah, I cannot.
You're saying you're not allowed to like put signs out or anything?
We can act as private, we cannot, let's just say this. We cannot participate in a meeting on these grounds. Okay, in other words, as council members, we cannot be on grounds and promote the levy. You can, and I want to get this from Rob to make sure, but my understanding from the auditor is you don't give up your private citizenship.
You can make your own sign.
Yep, you can do what you want to do, and you can talk as a private citizen, but you cannot talk as a council of the whole. If we're gonna be discussing something, we gotta do it beforehand, and we can give information out, and that's it. We cannot ask people to vote for a levy. We cannot try to influence them. That's all gotta be done before you ever vote. That's why we need a committee. The committee can do what the committee needs to do out. So, any questions that anybody might have, I'll be glad to answer.
Do you think people may get confused with us starting this mayor's court and everything, and we're asking for the levy? Do you think people may get confused thinking that it's gonna fund the mayor's court?
Nope, I don't think that's gonna be anything.
I think we're gonna make it very clear in the information that we put out, that we legally can put out, that it's gonna go toward our police and fire contracts.
And not the mayor's court?
No, our police service is in county fair. That's not changing.
Right.
You can't spend 1 penny
Right.
of that money for any other purpose than police and fire.
I just don't want people to get confused.
I'm not sure why, it's pretty clear.
Well, safety services, but there's not gonna be any extra money in there for.
No, they need to understand we've been subsidizing this for years.
Right, and we will still be a little bit, but not as much.
Any other questions? I have nothing else then, and so Linda, I know you said we did a lot of your stuff, but
All of my stuff is done. Really, yeah, you just went over all the tax discussion that we had. Justin went over a lot of the stuff we discussed. You did say you would like finance to consider setting aside
yeah,
$20,000 for cleanup efforts. In Cindy's fiscal report, she did say that the state audit, that was being done for 22 and 23 is pretty much done on the village side. that they had some recommendations, but we've already corrected several of them. But right now they're working on waterworks. And we need a public hearing that will be scheduled before the next council meeting for the purposes of adopting 2026 budget forecast. And that will be a public hearing before the council.
5:45. No, 6:45.
6:45.
That was, that's township.
That's something you do every year. It's housekeeping kind of thing. So I don't want to
And
hold
that's
this up
already in the
anymore.
morning. That'll be out in the paper 10 days before, so.
Sure, you wanna go ahead and do your public safety?
1 minute.
All right, Village Safety Committee met on June the 5th. There was no Hamilton County Sheriff's report because Sergeant Carney was not in attendance, but Administrator Habig did report that himself, Mr. Linda Schmidt, and the Sheriff's Department have been working cooperatively on a nuisance property. He reported that they have towed 2 vehicles, and Sheriff's Department is working with them, with us, as the ORC allows. Mr. Hayden is going to contact Sergeant Carney and get an update on accident data info for Route 50 and Cooper Road intersection, as well as requesting increased patrol due to recent concerns raised about people running the yellow and red light. There was no Miami Township Fire Department report, and I had not received anything from the Miami Township Fire Department administrator. So nothing to report there. Under the village administrator report, Mr. Haley reported that the speed sign data reports were reviewed and having changes for this past month. Speeding trends are following the same times as prior months, however, there were less cars traveling past, so this is most likely due to school being out of summer recess. He also talked about the clean court, which we've already addressed. Old business, there was no update on Cleves resident emergency notification system as we're still waiting on Hamilton County. Mr. Hayter will be working with Miami Township Fire Department to set a date for sometime this fall for CPR AED training for all village employees. We revisited previous discussions regarding the parking on Scott Street, creating a hindrance to vehicles safely passing at the crest of the hill. Recommended that Mr. Hayter and Service Director Knopf revisit the area and reconsider establishing a no parking zone just at the crest of the hill, just enough room to allow more width for the passing vehicles. Also recommended that we send out some type of notification to the residents informing them of this. There was some additional discussion held regarding the gate between the Coleman Woods and Indian Walk subdivisions. There was a question raised that if we open this gate, will we have to open the gate between the Coleman Woods and Westgate subdivision as well? And if there's any legalities to that, if we do not, that will be Village Administrator Hayden will be looking into that. Also, Mayor Burkholz has directed the Village Administrator to form a Streets Committee consisting of council and resident representatives. We recommended that this topic be deferred to the Street Committee for further investigation and to address. Also noted, Councilman Burns has put some information together on travel times and patterns that may be helpful. Mr. Hayden already reported on that. Mayor Burkholz reported that there were 2 children playing signs installed on Colberry Court due to resident prior concerns. Nothing to report for new business. The next safety committee meeting is going to be rescheduled due to the 4th of July holiday. So the next meeting will be held on Tuesday, July 1st at 7 p.m. There is to update the website and then frequent update our other locations. That is it.
And I have updated.
Okay.
Can I say something?
Yes.
I believe at the time, because I was the clerk treasurer, that there was a recommendation made by our street engineers, JMA, that Westgate was not wide enough. Well, it's parking on one side, but not the other. But that it created a safety concern if we would open up that gate for additional flow traffic. Because Westgate itself is not as wide as some of the streets maybe up in Coleman.
Or, what I was
understood was when that gate went up. I don't know how true this was,
For emergency access.
that alleyway is, or that road is not a public road. That's a private,
I
that
believe that's
section that goes into Fallen Wood, is a private road. So,
Westgate stops and then Coleman Street starts, but that section in between isn't a private road. Is that
private
what you're
road, that's
saying?
what I was told, I don't know how true that is.
Yeah, and I was always under the understanding that it was for emergency access only.
Yes, it was.
Because there's
The
only
fire
one,
department has
only
a
one
key.
entrance in and out of Homewood Circuit.
So I would just ask that you check with our engineers
But that,
and see if they've changed their opinion about Westgate. I don't know what the Coleman Woods situation might be totally different. Those streets are newer, they might be wider, but I just know Westgate was a concern for our street engineers. And it's a hill. People fly, they floor to get up it, and they fly down. I mean, my kids could not be out in the front yard for years because I was concerned about that traffic on that street.
So that only had got brought up because I had talked to someone who lives right there at where they're considering joining the two neighborhoods, and they've talked to a lawyer and, I don't know if the lawyer knows the whole situation, but, because they are very much against it. The lawyer had said, well, if you open one up, we have to do it. So that's.
Yeah, I don't
why
know
came
about
up,
that.
And I don't know how true that is, or maybe not at all, but
It's something that'll be looked into.
Yeah.
I would just say that it will be an advantage for Westgate people that might want to get to Bridgetown a little quicker. But it's also going to have traffic flying down because of the location of our school.
Yeah.
That, when this happened, the school wasn't built down there. I don't believe.
So it was,
I mean, as a resident back, I don't want that open, like, it's.
And I'm not sure the Coleman Woods people want our people flying through there
No,
in Bridgetown.
Yeah.
I don't know that.
I don't.
I know my husband said, well, I'll use it to get to Bridgetown quicker. Well, it's fine. I don't care.
In addition to the
I'm
concerns
just
of
a safety concern. I'm really concerned.
No, and it's
for
just a
young
very
families.
divided issue, and so we definitely need to
I
have.
mean, this isn't a flat road. Westgate is not a flat road. It's hilly, it's windy.
But there's additional safety concerns, issues that have previously been brought up when they were discussing Scotch, with some residents come requesting Scott Street be made a one-way. In addition to the concerns about Scott Street, Morgan Street is also not wide enough, and that intersection of Morgan and North Miami is not wide enough for the current traffic that's coming in and out of there, and putting additional traffic through there would create another safety.
Morgan Street doesn't even have curbs.
No.
They don't have curbs. Scott Street does, but once again, Scott Street is another steep hill.
Yeah.
Um, so I would just say, let's get a recommendation for Brian.
Well, that topic is being deferred to our new streets committee once they get established, and, I'm sure they'll look into all aspects.
You will have some people that want it open and you're gonna have some people who don't.
I just remember when all that went down, that where the gate was, that's considered a private alleyway, or
Well, we'll find out,
Private
because our
road.
street engineers
which
will know
wouldn't be
that.
our responsibility to maintenance it either, then it's a private road.
Well, how much is a private road? Because it's not,
Not a lot.
I mean, figure like.
yeah, there's
that.
not a lot of,
Not a lot.
2 or 3 houses. That's my understanding too. That belongs to, I think it's top 2 houses
on Westgate or on Home
on
Woods.
home court.
I mean, there needs to be a lot of conversation, because you have people who are very passionate on one side or the other.
I'll get a clear opinion from our engineer, our law director, but it does not meet the width thresholds to be declared a public roadway. It's a private easement. It's not a public roadway. We'll do our due diligence, but I do not believe that, one decision creates precedent for the other. When we establish the streets committee, we make sure that we do our due diligence and discuss that.
Yes.
Kevin, you wanna talk a little bit about parks or?
Well,
You have the May meeting.
Kevin, I ran the meeting and I did report on it at the council because we pushed council back a week because of Rose. And, We didn't, let me find my notes. Kevin's probably interested in knowing what was discussed as well. Not a lot, to be honest. I ran the meeting. I was able to lead the meeting until Kevin returned. Bev Myers is very concerned about the tree that is in the maintenance building and wanted it planted. Have we had any progress on that?
It is planted
Where was it decided it would go?
right where the tree sat last year.
Okay. She was concerned about the roots, but that's 50 years from now, so we don't.
I'm not gonna worry about that.
She said it's gonna be X amount of feet and that I won't be alive when that happens. So hopefully the roots won't ruin the waterworks building.
Alcohol will be.
But the tree is planted, so that's what I wanted to hear.
Christmas tree, right?
The Christmas tree. And it was donated by Three Rivers Women's Club, I believe. So that's why she was staying on it. Daniel gave some updates on the Cleves Community Park field conditions and how the new gate fees are being received. We probably lost some revenue due to when the park was flooded, but right now we're bringing it in, right?
Yeah.
Have you had to call a Brinks truck to make sure that everybody's protected, bringing their money in?
It's not quite soccer season, but we're getting.
Okay, gotcha. Mary mentioned some of the problems she was having over the insurance issues with the summer market, but I think those have been resolved. But they were discussed that night. The BMX track, the gentleman reported that somebody had gotten on that track, I believe, with a motorized bike and did some damage. So they talked a little bit about how to avoid that. Potential possible security measures were discussed. Nothing was resolved. And then the Christmas walk came up. And it was causing a little bit of panic on my end because we didn't know if Kevin was coming back. So I knew that the burden was going to be on me. But we did say that we would encourage, we would do what we can to create a committee that would assist
And
the
I'll
park
comment on
committee.
that.
And I volunteered a couple people who have since left. I put them on the committee anyway. I notified them they were on the committee. So that may be why they jumped out of here, but they're not taking away from me. So we're gonna try to get a committee of residents to commit to Christmas walk only. And we had discussed having the park committee meeting first to get all of our park business taken care of, and then have the Christmas walk follow it. So we had discussed different times. Now that Kevin's back, it's gonna be Kevin's call. But we had discussed potentially park meeting from 5:30 to 6:30 and Christmas walk meeting starting at 6:30.
And that's on Monday?
The third Monday of the month, I believe.
I'll just,
But with Kevin back, that might change.
I'll revise that. No, we're just gonna lose parks for this month, but because these things can carry on. If you're done, I can comment on
No, go for it.
preview of next month's or next Monday. And I will be brief because I actually have notes. So next Monday will be, is that right? The 18th, next Monday? No,
16th.
Now make sure I wasn't publicizing all things, but,
It's the 16th.
that'll be all Christmas walk. We're just gonna subsume parks. If there's other business, we can handle that offline.
That's
But
5:15.
yes, we will address a few updates. I think we just covered one of them. New business will be trivial things like talking about the meeting cadence. We will debate and resolve the event structure. Will it be Friday, Saturday, or Saturday only within 1 to 2 meetings. Major topic is committee structure, no soliciting role, somebody to fill the roles before we do this, but major point is to make the 501c, get it filed and make sure that there's a vessel to support fundraising efforts and cooperate with the village on this and other events. So people are gonna have to actually commit to it with.
Do you have the names of the people? Like when you met last year, I remember going to
I
the
sent that to you.
bistro.
Yeah, but I sent you a list of people of contacts,
You send it to me.
through the village email.
Hey,
We can get you those resources.
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, are you gonna let them know about this meeting? So that some of those people that were there that are willing to help find out about this. 'Cause
The business has already got everything, my mailing list got it all. I can make sure that there's nobody on that list that I haven't updated. If you didn't get an email, then
Okay, I'm not sure.
When did you send it, Mary?
Either that night or the next morning.
Okay.
But I can, if you need it, I can resend that. Yeah, I sent you a list of updated, people who were on the committee last year.
All right, I'll look for it. I don't see it,
Okay.
but I'll look for it in here as well.
yes. Then nothing here is surprising. That apart from that, that will be another. It will have to be resolved within 2 months. We want it done to work with. We'll discuss feedback from last year, and if we have time, talk about merchandise and swag, fundraising, the parade. But those will, as soon as we have assignments, that's their problem. We're not getting full discussions of those items. So we're gonna cover a lot of ground, but it is gonna be focused on getting organized around the committee and 501(c)(3).
You got it?
That's all.
Okay, so on our agenda tonight, we do have a scheduled executive session. So Rob drafted this for me. Mayor Chuck Burkholz moved for an executive session. Do I have somebody that will make that motion?
So moved.
And do I have a second?
Did we mention the purpose?
I'm getting ready to do that.
Okay.
I'm ready to vote. So I have, who was the second over here? Mary? Well, I'm getting ready to read the intent. I guess I can go that route. So the purpose of the executive session is to consider the appointment, employment, dismissal, discipline, promotion, demotion, or compensation of a public employee or official, or the investigation of charges or complaints against a public employee, official, licensee, or regulated individual unless the employee, official, licensee, or regulated individual requests a public hearing by division G1 of section 121.22 of the Ohio Revised Code. So I will go with what you said. I'd like to have a motion to go on into the executive session for that purpose. Who is the person?
So moved.
That's voted by Mr. Bolton. Do I have a second? Ms. Angeline. Any further discussion? Penny, would you call the roll?
Mr. Burns,
Yes.
Miss Angeline,
Yes.
Ms. Meyer,
Yes.
Ms. Meister,
Yes.
Mr. Babel,
Yay.
Ms. Bolton.
Yay.
That motion passes 6-0. We will come back up into regular session, but we do not plan on taking any action. So right now we are adjourned in executive session. And Justin, you'll move